Hello and welcome to another episode of the Under the Pines podcast. I'm your host, Max Manuel, and today's guest is Jo Weatherford. We mainly talked about addiction, so if you aren't interested in that topic, this episode is probably not for you. But if you are, then I'm sure you would get value out of this. If you do, please share it with a friend, and I hope I'll see you on the next one. Hello, Jo.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for taking the time. And you're on the other side of the world almost, so let's hope the connection sticks. But yeah, I want to talk to you about addiction mostly today, because you're one of these people that made it to the other side. And yeah, there's not that many that actually talk about this publicly, in my opinion. And, I've also been like functioning addict for many years, and you as well, I think. And I think it helps, when we talk about these type of topics, right? Because it's sometimes, people just need that little bump, right, to get thinking and to see, okay, there's hope, right? And maybe, they're still kind of in denial that, there's a lot of stuff that's not working for them because a lot is working for them, right? And
Right.
then, like in my case, first you have to have that big bang, right? So you start thinking about, what really matters. And yeah, so there's plenty of good, angles we could take this, but maybe, let's start with this. Like, what is addiction to you?
Such a great question. So, for me, addiction is anything that you do compulsively to try to start feeling something or to stop feeling something that has negative consequences. And the most important word in that sentence is compulsion. So, it is
Yeah.
this desire greater than yourself, greater than consequences. It is an innate, habitual compulsion to do this thing. Gabor Mate wrote this phenomenal book. It's called The Realm of Hungry Ghosts. And he describes in it the idea of it's a Buddhist philosophy, right? So, one of the realms in which we can exist, the hungry ghost realm, there are these creatures that are called pitas. And they have tiny, tiny little necks and then huge bellies. And they're hungry all the time. And there's food all around them. But their necks are so small that anytime they try to eat, it turns to ash. And so it's this idea of never being filled, of this God shaped hole within us that we will do anything to try to fill, and nothing is working. And that is addiction. And the problem is, it works until it doesn't. There's like a point of diminishing returns, right? Nobody becomes an addict by jumping forward to the worst shit that happens at the end. The bottom line is, in the beginning, it's like, I remember the first time I took a drink and I was 12 and I was like, oh my God, I'm home. It was the feeling I'd been craving my entire life. And so it works until it doesn't. And that to me is addiction. So again, one more time, something we do compulsively to start feeling something or to stop that has negative consequences.
Mm. Yeah, because oftentimes people don't realize why they're doing it, right? It's just there, and you obviously feel better, and then there's that weird dichotomy, right? That weird back and forth between being hungover and then regretting, and then still doing it, and like always choosing that side still, right? Even though it's not serving you, because in the subconscious, for example, right, there's that what you just talked about, right? Like that fulfillment about something, right? And that's I mean that's next level stuff, right? When you think about these topics, because like when you already know, okay, this is the root cause, then you can already work on it, right? But like a lot of people don't even get there.
Well, and maybe, right? Because to me, knowledge doesn't change behavior. So you can have an aha moment where you're like, oh my God, I get it. I get why I'm like this. And that still doesn't
Mm.
mean you're going to do anything about it. And that's kind of the thing with denial, I think of as well. Like, is it denial or is it that we just don't want to do anything about it? Because I think we know, even if we're super high functioning, we know when it's a problem. But the
Mm.
idea that I would be honest about that might mean I need to change my behavior. And so it's easier to just make it not a big deal. And then that allows us to just keep violating our own standards and keeps everybody away from telling us what to do. And then, we get to just keep ruining our lives quietly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one. So you had your first ring when you were 12. I think I started with 14, I think, yeah, more or less. And probably, all throughout my 20s got even more, I would say. Like, yeah, early 20s during like my studies and stuff was, it's just normal, when you grow up in a country like, or in a state like Bavaria, where beer is kind of food, right? Or then I also have like ancestry from Croatia, and then like, wine is part of, the lunch, right? Like, not that everybody gets drunk, but like you have a glass, right? And it's just normal, and that's how you grow up. And then, you basically don't have any boundaries, and it just escalates from there, right? So you had alcoholics as like both parents, right?
Yes.
And yeah, take me to those times, because I'm in retrospect, you probably understand a lot. Like, how important do you think it is for parents to keep like a clean home with that kind of stuff?
It's interesting. The literature shows the most ideal scenario for a child, as far as becoming an alcoholic or not, is to have one parent that doesn't drink and then one parent that drinks responsibly. So they get both role
Mm,
modeled to them, right? So if we're gonna just say this is the ideal, you have the best shot at not becoming a drunk, that's what it would look like. For
okay.
me, both my parents, extremely, extremely successful, very high functioning, and very much alcohol was just a part of it. And they were both pilots, and, that whole stereotype, like stereotypes exist for a reason, right? Because there's truth to it. And it's just like hard partying, like high risk, high dopamine lifestyle. And, yeah, so that's kind of what I grew up with. And then we can look and we can go, okay, there's a genetic component to addiction. There just is, right? So both my parents have the gene for alcoholism. So I definitely got it. But then we look and we go, okay, is the environment such that that gene gets flipped on or off? Because we can have the gene for a lot of things, but if the environment isn't conducive to turning it on, we'll never experience it. It's very dangerous to say, like, oh, all the women in my family get breast cancer. I mean, you are
Mm,
literally casting that spell into fruition. So it's like, no, 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 no. We can say there's patterns in history, but if the environment, if mine is clean, if mine is secure, if mine is not stressed, if mine is healthy, that gene won't get activated. So epigenetics, we know some get turned on and some get turned off. Your genes do not determine your destiny. So we need to be really careful about the environment that we grow up in. And big traumas or small traumas, big T, little t, somebody's breakup could hurt as bad as somebody else's like massive trauma. We're all very different in how we process emotion, resiliency. So I've worked with a lot of people over the years that are like, I don't know what happened to me. Like, I didn't have any, I wasn't, assaulted. My parents didn't beat me. Like, I don't know where this came from. And we have to remember, even the lack of attunement could be traumatizing to a child. And when we think about attunement, it's like this tuning fork goes, this one goes, right? Like you're just resonating, going together. And if a parent is, a single mom working 3 jobs, just trying to keep it together, like how attuned are they going to be? So that lack of attunement alone can be internalized and have the same impact as a trauma. So, for me, I think I grew up as basically an only child. I was super alone. I was molested when I was younger. I mean, it's almost sad how textbook my story is. I almost like hate how textbook it is. But yeah, when I was 12, I was dating a guy that was 19, which is also just so telling of where I was at and how much I craved love and attention and how, dysfunctional I was. And he cheated on me, shocker. And that was the first time I drank. And truly, from that moment on, drinking was not one of my coping mechanisms. It was my only coping mechanism. And anytime I felt
mm,
something I didn't want to feel, I drank. And anytime I was going out and I didn't want to feel the unworthiness or didn't want to feel the anxiety or I didn't want to feel the boredom was a huge trigger for me. Like I very early on had a lot of dopamine receptors in my brain that needed a lot of stimulation at all times. So I would also drink to just not feel bored. I would drink
Mm,
sometimes to make me more interesting. I would drink sometimes to make you more interesting. Like it just became the thing I did all the time.
yeah. Yeah, similarities here. Like for me, it was also I slowed my brain down, right? Because always thinking, many things at the same time and jumping back and forth, and then all of a sudden you're told this is bad, right? Especially like in primary school already, and then it was easy, just have a couple of drinks, like you slow down, you fit in better, right? Because obviously fitting in, I think that's the case, or was the case with you too, right? Like that was just prevalent that throughout those school years. And yeah, it's that form of self-medication, right? And I think it's a big issue because obviously, right, like we get, we have these so-called doctors, right, and the Western medicine that basically pass on these stamps, right? And you just talked about words being spells, right? And I absolutely agree. I think it's so dangerous, that we have these medical doctors running around and like giving these diagnose yeah, like diagnosis almost, right, like to young children, and they're in the room and they listen to this, right? And like they talk about how much of a problem, how big of a problem this is going to be if they don't take that pill, right? And I think that's already a major mistake, right? I mean, I was lucky because my parents, they didn't give me the Ritalin and the Adderall, you guys call it, right? And
Yeah.
because that's technically speed, right? So yeah, I didn't
Yes.
take that route. I took it later on, like during university. I went and got it myself because I got to a limit because I was like just not studying. Just always went through like that and just got to a limit. And I said, okay, I need this stuff, and it was horrible, right? I felt like a robot. And so I switched again, to different substances to basically, self medicate. But yeah,
Yes.
when was that moment with you when you understood, okay, this is enough, right? Like I have to change, like 100%.
I think I had that awareness with me for a very long time, but I just also knew I wasn't ready. I knew I wasn't ready to make that leap. It's weird because as somebody who had multiple suicide attempts when I was using, like, so alcohol almost killed me, but it also almost saved my life because if I hadn't had a way to check out during a lot of my life, I would not have stuck around. So I knew that what I wasn't willing to do was to get sober and then white knuckle it. And to hate myself and hate life at the level that I did without using, I would rather be drunk or high and miserable than sober and miserable. So I think what actually changed for me is I did so much therapy. I went to rehab multiple times. I was trying to get better. And even though I couldn't stop using during that time, I was healing myself. I was learning new tools. And so it took a very long time. And like I said, I would relapse, I would go back out, I'd get a year sober, I'd, start drinking again. So you could look at that time period and go, wow, what a mess. Or that was actually when I was putting in the mat time. You know what I mean? I was slowly learning to stop hating myself. So that when I finally went to aversion therapy and I eradicated my desire to drink, like I don't want to drink. I don't sit there and go, oh, wow, you shouldn't drink or try not to or any of it. I don't want to anymore. I did a treatment that changed my brain. And I had done so many years of therapy that I was just finally ready. But it was a long journey. It was 15 years of trying before something worked.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, oftentimes, people say now, yeah, go and do that ayahuasca ceremony or, take a psychedelic and it will change everything. But I also think, you have to do the work first. Doesn't matter what addiction it is, right? Like you have to, get your body intact, right? Get all the other toxins out of the way, right? Check your microbiome, like see if you're lacking any vitamins, see what else is lacking, what's not functioning properly, right? Like are your organs actually functioning? Is your detox process, up to par with whatever else data you have? And that's a funny thing, because like obviously now people are again looking for the quick fix, right? They just don't want to do the work, so they look for this one little pill that they can take and they just pop it, and it will all be fine on the other side. But I know you've also, uh, you know, delved into that sphere of psychedelics. Like, what's your take on this whole topic? And yeah, let's go there a bit.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love that you mentioned because I hear the stories all the time like, oh my God, I did ayahuasca once and then I was just cured and my life was beautiful and everything just works. And I'm like, bullshit. These are magnificent tools. We are so fortunate that the indigenous people who have used these medicines for thousands of years are sharing them with us. And I am so grateful for every single experience I have had, and it has had a profound impact and changed my life.
Yeah.
And I'm still human and I'm still dealing with shit. And some days I do it really well. And some days I got to take that radical self inventory and be like, ooh, you're being so selfish. Oh my God, look at how greedy you are. Really? That's how you're showing up? I mean, it's a constant process. But what I will say is this: when it comes to addiction, I want to focus a lot on psilocybin for trauma healing or MDMA, and then also ibogaine or iboga when it comes to addiction. So I am, of course, 12 years off alcohol. So I have no idea if iboga would have helped me, if I could go back 12 years ago and have this experience. But I just went to Nicaragua. I did iboga, so not ibogaine, not the synthesized version of it, but just the raw, the bark. And what was crazy is it was 24 hours still lying on a mat. And most people have the same experience. It's like it goes into the filing cabinet of your life and just starts picking out all these key experiences where I did something I was ashamed of or wrong or act out of alignment. And it's like this stern talking to from your grandfather. Like Mama Ayahuasca for me is like this nurturing, gentle, awesome, experience. No, this was an ass kicker. It was just awful. And then after reviewing all the horrible things that I had done my whole life, it went into my future and horrible things I would do in the future. And what I
Mm.
realized, of course, at the end of it was that is my unconscious programming. Like that is actually what is going on in the background. And I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe I'm contending with all that nonsense all the time. But it's almost like giving it a voice, giving it center stage for 24 hours to just go and me listen, it shut up. And so that's what I noticed 3 days after the ceremony. I'm like, why am I so at peace? And I was like, oh my God, my head is quiet. It's
Mm.
literally quiet. That second voice going all the time is quiet. And I can't even explain it until you've had the experience. It's like the eye can't see itself. Your fingertip can't touch its fingertip. You can't appreciate it until it's gone. And it's amazing. And I'll tell you, that was almost 2 months ago. And that voice, it's back a little bit, but she's a lot nicer and it's not as frequent. So from a cravings perspective or a shame perspective, which those two things drive addiction, to be able to silence that voice is phenomenal. And to be able to take that medicine and just deal with your shit, it's like doing the most epic 12-step work ever. So I do really, really believe that iboga and ibogaine, when done in the correct setting with medical professionals, like we need to be really giving this a second look.
Mm. Okay, so shame. Let's go there. How's that connection to addiction? Because that's an interesting one, I think.
I don't believe that shame is necessarily the root cause of all addictions, but it is in the driver's seat once the addiction starts. Because let's be real, when we're addicted, we are shitty people. There's no other way around it. We just are. We're selfish, we're sick, we're acting from that place. We do a lot of really messed up things. And I can't violate you or hurt you or act that way without creating shame.
Mm.
Sociopaths can then shift that energy onto somebody else. But most addicts are really good people. They're actually very empathetic. They really do care. So if I'm acting out in this way, and this is the energy and the frequency of which I am operating, I am going to feel shame. And it's an important distinction, guilt versus shame. Guilt is what I did is bad, which is useful. We need to know that. We need to know when we're acting out of alignment. When I feel guilty, that's my indication. Ooh, clean it up. When I feel shame, shame is I am bad. When I believe at my core I am bad and rotten, that there is something wrong with me, that I don't deserve love, that I am unworthy, what an awful place to operate from in the world. Because remember, the ego always wants to be right. So it'll seek evidence to prove that it's right. So if I believe I'm a piece of shit, look, here it is. Here's all the reasons I am. So shame really drives addiction. It's like, why are you drinking? Because I'm sad. Why are you sad? Because of what I did when I was drinking. And now we're not even talking about the root issue. It doesn't even matter why you started, because now you're just caught in this cycle up here and the addiction becomes the problem. So it's really, really difficult. But I like this analogy. It's supposedly a true story, actually. When we're thinking about somebody in addiction that's dealing with a lot of shame, what if you were actually inherently worthy of love? What if you were actually enough? So when Michelangelo created the statue of David, at that time, like nobody had seen anything that beautiful. And so the story goes, a reporter came to him and asked him, "Oh my God, how did you create something so magnificent?" And he said, "It was really easy. I just chipped away the parts that weren't angel." And I really love that when I'm working with my clients. Is like, or when you see a family member or someone you love struggling with addiction, as hard as it is, as much evidence as there is that they are broken, that they are not okay, that they are whatever. It's like, if you can believe in their inherent angel and we are just chipping off the parts that don't work, what a beautiful way to help people radically own who they are and tap into that shame while also knowing where they are headed. It's a different way. It's really powerful.
Yeah, I've never heard this one. Yeah, with me it was quite the opposite to what you said just earlier. Like when I was in that addiction phase, like I was giving way too much. I was actually
Mm.
like giving way too much. I was the complete opposite, right? And I was giving so much that like people close to me, would suffer, and my work would suffer, my everything would suffer. But I would like, push it like almost way too far just to help that other person, for example, right?
Wow.
And I had to learn it the hard way, right? And because like I had no boundaries in that sense. If I understood, okay, this person had a tough childhood, like because I had this one friend, I thought, and I helped her out, and they just take, and it doesn't end, right? Like it just pulls you down, and you don't realize it until it's like really bad, right? So yeah, interesting. So it can go both ways. And so you studied Gabo Mate like a lot? Like who are your teachers, or mentors that really helped you in that journey to being of service now?
Yeah, when I think back, Dr. Wayne Dyer and Tony Robbins and Eckhart Tolle,
Mm.
those Marianne Williamson, that was kind of my introduction into this world, and still so relevant. Tara Brach, I love her Buddhist philosophies and talks on love. So that was kind of like the OGs. And then it was actually the Aubrey Marcus podcast that I started learning about psychedelics. And this was 10 years ago when I started diving into that world of ayahuasca and psilocybin therapy. And it was actually through that podcast. So what a beautiful reminder of the power and influence of podcasting. But it really, that changed my life in the most beautiful way. I will always, always, always be forever grateful. And it's cool because I'm actually very good friends now with Aubrey Marcus's podcast producer, who I just randomly met in Austin, which is a totally different story. But it's precious to me because that was such a pivotal moment in my life. And so to see it come full circle and the woman that I am now and how I get to show up, I'm very, very grateful for the people who have influenced me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Byron Katie is phenomenal. The work, the 4 questions that you can ask of, is this true? Do I know this is true beyond a reasonable doubt? Like, who would I be without my story? There's just some great, quick tools that you can use. Peter Crone is phenomenal when we're
Mm.
trying to break through victim mentality. God, there's just So many. And every day there's a new and exciting. And I also think the people will come into your experience based on what you're healing at that time. Like somebody
Yeah.
might be super relevant at one point in your life. And then, just like our friends, right? Like this has been coming up for a lot of people. They're losing a lot of people. I live in Los Cabos. It's a very transient place, like my best friend just moved back to Canada. So it's just like this constant ebb and flow of people, right? And I love the idea that sometimes we're on a bus with some people and we're going one place and then they get off and new people get on. And then, maybe you get off the bus and you're going a different direction. And so this idea of just non attachment and just appreciating who shows up, but I really would encourage anybody listening to pay attention to the signs. If somebody keeps coming up or some kind of therapy keeps coming up or like these little God nudges sometimes in a direction, or if there's a retreat that you've always wanted to explore, like get curious because you just never know who's got the medicine for you. You know what I mean? And remember that you are your own healer. Everybody else is just there, to witness and facilitate and be a role model, but it's like you already have everything you already need within you.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's something that once you realize that, then you have the power, right? Because like obviously in the beginning when you're struggling like with yourself, then you don't understand that, right? Like you think that other person is gonna do all the work for you and like push you all the time, but actually they're just holding space, right? They're just opening up these pathways so you can go down them yourself, right? And actually, find the light, for example, right? So why did you choose Los Cabos, by the way? Like just because of the weather, or what's the point down there?
Well, I laugh a little bit because it's crazy. I had been here one time in 2009. I did not like it. So fast forward, it's COVID. I've been teaching at the university for 12 years. I'm online for 5 semesters. I am burnt out. My ex husband and I owned a big business. I knew it wasn't coming back after we got shut down. So it's like, sell everything, right? So we
Mm,
get to that point, and then it's like, where are we going to go? And he's like, how about Mexico? And at first I thought, man, you're nuts. And then I started meditating on it, and it was like, you need to move to Cabo. Now, again, I'd only been here one time and I didn't like it. But I said, okay. And that download just kept coming in, kept coming in, kept coming in. And I'll tell you, we got off the plane the next day, bought a house down here. And so our marriage didn't last, but I will always be grateful for him for showing up and letting me, just be like, yeah, let's do this. And this is the place. And Cabo has been like just the most epic adventure for me ever. I love it here. And yeah, it's like the beaches, the people, it's so great.
yeah, it's a lot of Americans go there, right? Like for a weekend sometimes, or just for a couple of days, just on holiday, right? Like I imagine there's a lot of people like from back home, right? Just rotating, as you said.
So many Americans, so
Yeah.
many Canadians, so many digital nomads. I mean, that was
Mm,
one of the gifts of COVID, right? If you were able to move your work online and then you can go anywhere, for someone like me, that is, I mean, that was a game changer because I love to explore. I have a brain that needs to be constantly stimulated. I really do. And I don't do like hard drugs anymore. My drug now is more travel, and I like putting myself in new situations. And it's funny because you mentioned ADD earlier and Ritalin and all that shit, and it's like, yeah, I mean, just look at the bottle. It says amphetamine. That's exactly what it is. And we're like, well, this kid can't sit down for 8 hours a day and pay attention. It's like, duh. Anyway, I'm not saying there isn't like actual stuff going on with the brain and that it's not a real thing, but I mean, also, come on, not every single kid is going to do well in that situation. And I didn't do well either. And it was like, I could never focus. So now as an adult, though, it's like, how do we create a life that is stimulating, but not off quick fix dopamine hits? And I mean, that's the thing, right? With porn, with fast food, with all this shit, it's like, can you be still and be okay? Like, get good at being bored. You want a superpower? That's a great one. Get good at being alone. You will stop chasing people and people pleasing and violating your own boundaries to secure connection, right? Like those are really powerful tools.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I was the same. I traveled a lot until I was like 25. Lived in many different countries, probably moved places, every year or two. And sometimes in the city, I would choose different places because I just exactly what you said, like it would feed my ADD, right? Like it would be nice to be in a new place and like have to find, out where I'm at, like what are the good spots to go to and all that kind of stuff. It would really, feel great. And then I understood at some point that the why I was doing that was that I didn't feel home anywhere. And then
Mm.
I kind of, I thought about that and I was like, okay, shit. And I worked on that. Right. And once I understood that, that feeling was an internal thing, then that is, yeah, that basically was gone right in the end. Yeah. But yeah, that's an interesting topic for sure. So were you were hard drugs like a constant thing with the alcohol, or was it like back and forth? Because usually, it's a tandem, right? Doesn't just work with the drinks, right?
Yeah, alcohol was definitely always there. And then I would have bouts with other things. Like in high school, I went to this bougie boarding school and everybody did blow. So I started doing it. And then that would kind of fizzle out. And then in college, I went through another round of it. But it didn't get really bad until I moved to LA and was modeling full time. And everybody just, it was smoking meth to keep our weight down. And so that was probably my longest stint, and with speed was about a year. And that was not good. It's so crazy. I don't even eat gluten now. And I'm like, I cannot believe I put that toxic shit in my body like all the time. But that was definitely when it got to be the worst. What's crazy though is I would smoke meth and not drink. So I was like, this is a good thing. Anything that stops me from drinking is a
Mm.
win, because my drinking was so destructive. Even meth, I would just sit there and like, I don't know, clean my house, watch TV. It was a lot, in some ways, safer than drinking, where I was like out and about and functioning. I mean, that's the craziest thing about blackouts, right? Is you don't just black out and go to bed. Like you black out and you're still just like this menace. And then
Mm.
you don't even remember it. So, like, sure, it's embarrassing when someone's like, oh, look at this video, or do you know what you said? But because you weren't there for it, you don't even feel the real repercussions of it because you're so checked out. There's like this demon version of you just raising hell, and you're not even there for it. So, yeah, but so hard drugs were more, I'd have these spurts with them, and a lot of it was about modeling and keeping my weight down.
Mm. Yeah, LA and Vegas. I also spent some time there. It's very interesting. I mean, just like what's normalized there, right? Like all these bottle girls and what they call in Vegas. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, basically the girls that are kind of motivating the table right in the background. There's like this rich dude coming alone because he doesn't have any friends. He just flies in, by himself or with another friend, and then they have like 8 or 10 girls sitting around them, right? And it's like it's sad at some point, right? Like once you've once you've seen that, but yeah, how was that phase like in your life? Because you've also like worked with the Playboy and like did you live in the mansion at some point?
I didn't. I would go to the
Yeah.
parties there, but I never lived there. And actually, Playboy for me was a good experience as much as it could be. I was definitely um, doing things I would have never done sober. Like being sober, I
Mm.
would never take my clothes off and allow somebody to photograph me. There is zero chance that's happening. So drinking allowed me to do a lot of things that I wouldn't normally do. And what I'll say about Playboy is they were very respectful. They would send limos to the house to get me. I was always treated with an incredible amount of respect. I was very sad to hear a lot of the allegations come out later. And I'm not discounting any woman's story of how she was treated with Playboy. All I can speak to is my own. And it it was actually very respectful. I've been sexually harassed way worse at real jobs. You know what I mean? Like corporate America. So I had a good experience with them. Certainly when I started going into more of the adult realm, it got really dark. It was not healthy. I didn't last long in that world.
No. Yeah, I imagine. Yeah, the term I was looking for before was atmosphere modeling. That was the one, right?
Ah, yes. Yeah. Well, and it is crazy, right? Talk about hungry ghosts.
Right.
And it's no lie. Like these
Yeah.
dudes will come in, they will spend an entire year's salary to make it seem like they're bigwigs. Like we even knew how to watch like for fake Rolexes and shit like that. Like it's so crazy. It was just bizarre. And it was also fun. Like I worked at the World Series of Poker and, I just
Mm.
live at the Luxor for a month or one of my favorite things I did was for motorcycle companies. So I'm just wearing a bikini signing posters, but I'm at Sturgis and Biketoberfest. And so there was also a lot of really great moments too. And I'm really fortunate. I'm one of those people, I don't have regret. Like the way I am wired, if I can't do anything about it, I'm not going to fucking live there. So like, anything. I just like, yeah, it already happened. I can't change it. Move forward. And I understand I'm just wired differently. But I'm really thankful for that because what a nightmare to be fixated on things that have already happened and you can't do anything about them. So I can look at my experience and go, okay, I would never have done that sober. And it was also my best option at the time. Like I was so sick, I could not have had a job. I was not going to go to an office. I could barely get out of bed on time. I didn't know what day it was. So good for me that I found this industry that I got paid a ridiculous amount of money to go do something where I could show up drunk. It was the only thing I could have done at that time. So although I'm not proud of it, I'm not ashamed of it. It just makes perfect sense. When you really zoom out, you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's why they landed there. It makes sense. And again, I'm not also letting myself off the hook. I paid dearly for doing that. There are consequences to our actions. Like my dream was to be a broadcast journalist. I worked for a local NBC affiliate. During college, I co-hosted a show at 9 a.m. on Sunday. Like I wanted to be a broadcast journalist and I ruined my shot. Like once you pose naked, you're never going to report the news ever. Never. I ruined that dream. And that's just how it is, right? Like, so again, consequences, but I don't look back and regret it because it happened.
Yeah. Yeah. If I would do that, it would also be a bad idea. But yes, it's the way it is. I was usually more, focused on the future. That was my thing that I had to work on a lot, right? Like just being, more in the now. And also I think back in the day, Eckhart Tolle was probably the first book that pushed me in the right direction. It's such a good like starting point. If someone listening has no idea where to start, just get that book. Be here now, whatever it's called. Yeah, in the now. I don't know what is it called. Something with now. Yeah,
Power of Now. Yeah. Or a New
power of
Earth.
now. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, we talked about environment, right? Because like I spent some months in Vegas. I also worked there because my ex girlfriend she grew up there, and I've been like outside of the strip a lot, and like that environment there, like it's a lot in the external, right? And you also talk about that in terms of addictive tendencies that sometimes the environment a lot of times dictates like what goes on within you and with you. Like how important do you think it is sometimes to just put in a hard stop? Like let's say when okay, shit, I'm in the wrong surroundings, right? Like I just move places, so it doesn't get like this thing that you're running away from stuff, right? Like but rather like give you the ability to start breathing again, right? Like to have that fresh start, not to be surrounded with these people that always do the same shit with you.
Yeah. I mean, that's it, right? It's having the ability to pause, remove yourself from the echo chamber where everybody is just reaffirming your nonsense and have the ability to be your own compassionate witness. I mean, talk about Gabor Mate and his brilliant approach to life and healing and all of it. being that compassionate witness is great, but you have to get still first. So if I'm
Yeah.
in this lifestyle, this nonsense, this, and trust me, I still push boundaries a lot. I like people that are walking red flags, and I enjoy pushing the edge and finding it, right? But I have to be equally attuned inward. Like, where am I? How is this serving me? How is this hurting me? And it's about truly being the adult that we didn't ever have. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, I'm going to go into my wise woman and I'm going to just really assess, how is this working? Is this making me more expansive? Am I con- constricting? Am I putting myself in danger? What is the payoff? Like, it's just about getting really curious and getting really honest. And what am I looking for? And what is the core need I need met right now?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So if someone, listening, like, has never worked on, his addictions, and they know something's wrong, like, what would you say are, like, the first three things that they could do, they might do? Do you think it's like reaching out to a professional right away, or is there some stuff that they can do themselves? Like, what's your take on that? And then also, do you think it's possible to, really get someone clean, like, just, through online work, or do you think it has to be like a mix?
Great question. Yeah, I mean, if you're just kind of exploring for the first time, I would start with Gabor Mate. I mean, he's just, to me, so powerful. And there's so many free resources. If you just type in Gabor Mate addiction, you will have an arsenal of phenomenal tools. I mean, there's my TED Talk. If you want just a quick 10 minutes on addiction, there's so many free resources, but get curious. And Gabor or Johan Hari, like, start collecting information, but knowledge doesn't change behavior. So you can learn all the things you want, you can have all the aha moments, but if you aren't willing to put it into practice, so start with the knowledge, then move into something, like a 21-day cleanse, right? Like, just see how you do, either cutting back or stopping. Obviously, with something like drinking or Xanax, any kind of central nervous system depressant, you can't just stop those. Like, you could die.
Mm,
So I'm not advocating just
yeah.
stopping if you're at that level. But for most people that are listening, they're probably in that, like, in between spot where it's not so bad that you have to go to treatment, but like, you're hitting that edge quite a bit. You know what I mean? And maybe you got the DUI, or your boss has talked to you, or your wife is like, dude, unsustainable, right? So you're just kind of tapping the line. Try, try to stop or significantly cut back. But here's the thing, it's really important that we don't teach ourselves to fail. So if you're drinking every day and there's zero chance you're going to be able to stop, don't stop. Say, I'm only going to drink after 5 p.m., or I'm going to keep it to 2 drinks, or I'm not going to, do something that you can actually be successful at, because we don't want to train our brain that we fail and it's no big deal and we just go on to the next thing. That's dangerous. So pick something that you could actually do. And harm reduction is great. If you come home and like slam 15 shots and you're like, yeah, I'm going to go home and just drink 4 beers. Awesome. That's an improvement. You know what I mean? Like, so then get really curious of, what is this doing for me? Who do I become when I drink? What am I feeling? What need am I trying to meet? What is right with the addiction? What does it do for me? So you just kind of start experimenting. But the other thing too is that dopamine cleanse is important. If I watch porn every single day, that impacts my brain more than heroin. So there's ways to titrate off too. Like, I have a very good friend of mine that was addicted to porn. And what he would do is, he then said, okay, I'm only going to watch one person. Like, instead of having
Mm,
this, arsenal of a million different scenes and people, and I can watch whatever I want, I'm only going to watch one person. So we did that for a week. And then from there, started putting different parameters, like, okay, and now I'm only going to look at a single girl, like, in a bikini or whatever, and just titrated down. Like, It's unbelievable. We are just driven by chemicals. So if you're just going to
Mm,
eradicate that right away, that may not be useful for you. So start titrating down, start setting realistic goals, and then, yeah, like getting in, doing some deep work with a therapist or like me with a coach. It's important. I don't know how people do it solo. I'm sure it's possible because we have everything we need within us for sure. But the point of somebody holding space is to help you access that within yourself in a loving, compassionate, supportive way. And it's good to find people who embody what you want. You know, it's like somebody that wants to stop drinking. I'm a great person because I've done it for 12 years. I embody it. So no matter who you work with, make sure that they are walking their talk because there are codes, there are activations within us. When somebody has gone before you, leads you, it's powerful. So I would definitely encourage that. But yeah, start somewhere. Just start. That's all that matters.
yeah. Yeah. Would you occasionally have a drink now, or are you like you're saying no categorically?
No, I would never. And here's the thing, I don't even know if I would immediately go back, but I would never risk it. And I don't want to find out because I know how hellacious and how dark it was that I just would never, ever, ever risk it. That is the most terrifying thing. I really, truly don't think I could survive it again. Having 12 years away from it, 12 years reprieve, holy shit. Being back in that, oh, I don't think I would be able to. So I would never risk it. And like
Yeah.
I said, I don't want it, which is really the gift. I'm not like, oh, damn it, I wish I could drink or, I'm going to go to 18 AA meetings a week, just try to keep myself so busy that I don't. I mean, and if you do that, great, do whatever you need to do. But I'm just saying for me, it's just not part of my life. Like, I wouldn't drink a bottle of nail polish remover. I just wouldn't. That's how I feel about
Yeah.
alcohol. It's just a no.
Yeah. Okay. So to get back what I asked before, do you think it's possible to, you know, get to the other side just by with online work?
I think anything is possible. Do I think it's probable? No. I think when you are at the level of addiction that I experienced, you need a complete pattern interrupt. You are leaving your environment, you are going away, you are doing intense work, right? Like, can you learn Spanish by an app? Yeah, you probably can, right? But are you going to get it a lot quicker, become really fluent if you go do an immersion therapy program? Yeah, you are. Like when you're, forced and it's your whole focus every single moment, yeah. And so, then the question becomes, well, where do you go to treatment? And again, like there's an Ibogaine clinic in Tijuana that's supposedly amazing. There's one in the Bahamas for intense trauma work. The Meadows in Arizona is phenomenal. There are good places out there. They're expensive, it's just so unfortunate. Like, yeah, everything costs money. But when you are at that addicted level, I feel it would be very challenging to be able to heal that with just online or traditional talk therapy. I think you're way better off finding, if you don't have a history of psychosis, somebody that can help
Yeah.
with plant medicine ceremony, get you microdosing psilocybin, doing the deep dives into releasing your trauma, go away, do the therapy, and then completely disrupt your life, I didn't come back from rehab and go hang out with my same friends. It's like you're completely recreating your identity.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, for me, I would never go into like an institution, and stay there. Like it was never an option for me. But like I worked probably, I don't know, maybe with 15 different coaches, and you kind of, step by step, looked for the next thing, right? Like always shedded something, and then the next step, and was a lot of online work, and then also offline work, right? And also some LSD therapy, which was kind of the last little nudge that I needed. And then, since then I'm not drinking either anymore. But that was literally the last little bit.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing. And it's good to hear. And I also think too, when we're ready, we're ready. And it's like your destiny of healing is already your destiny. And so how we get there, there's a lot of different paths, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
when your intention is to heal, oh my God, like that's almost more important than the work. You know, it's just that beautiful intention, that calling, that knowing that I deserve this, I will have this. Like that is powerful. Then if you go do a ceremony, then if you do it online or whatever it is, it's like you just keep that as your North Star. And when you have your North Star as sobriety, then that will lead every decision. Like every decision will come back to that. Does this get me closer or farther from this truth? You know, and so there's power in that.
Yeah. So you also had this horrible thing happen to you, right? Like you got raped at some point. Like how did you work through this mentally? Because I can imagine this was a tough one as well.
Yeah, it was awful. And I was 28 years old and it happened in a hotel in Tampa and I didn't remember it. I woke up in a bathtub, the sheets had been stripped, like I knew I had been assaulted, but I couldn't remember. The guy that I had dinner with the night before had drugged me, carried me up to my hotel room and was obviously a pro, had wiped my phone, like there was just all this shit, right? So there I am and I know something bad happened to me, but I don't know what. It was the first time in my life I actually felt sad for myself. Like I felt this true sense of compassion, like this shouldn't have happened to me. So, although it was one of the most horrific experiences of my life, it was also the catalyst for me to get better because not long after that is when I went to treatment. And it was the first kind of opening for myself to actually be like, wow, I love you. I don't know what that means. I don't know if I've ever felt it before, but I had this sense, this flood of compassion. And I want to say, because I share this story a lot at universities, I always have young women come up to me and men, like, I've never felt that before. I still think it's my fault. So let me just say, we're all catching up to who we really are. The truth is always true, whether you believe it or not. And if you have been violated, it is never your fault, and healing it is your responsibility because you deserve to enjoy sex and to be vulnerable and fall in love and not live in that constant state of fear or take on somebody else's shame that is theirs. You know, like you deserve a beautiful life. And so yes, I had that experience and it created the opening for me to get better.
Hmm. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because I think I also had something like I think similar happen to me. I didn't know about it until a healer, a guide. She told me, she's like, "You do you know that this happened to you?" Right? And I'm like, "Whoa, holy shit!" And she told, "Yeah, also was something was put in your drink," and I know probably what day it was, and I know exactly who it is, but I just didn't know about it anymore. Right? Just like it's not like I woke up like in that scene, but like because that person was like constantly at my place, it was just normal, right? But then like 2 years later or three even, you get to know about this. Was like a tough spot for me because like it violates like everything, right? Like on every level.
Absolutely. And it's so
Yeah.
powerful that you share that story because there are so many people that feel so trapped, so alone. And I think, especially to hear it come from a man, it is like this beautiful invitation, like that you are not alone and that other people have had this experience. There's nothing wrong with you and you can heal. And it's just so important that we know that. You know, we all need that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important. It's tough to talk about this stuff, but I think it's important, right? Just exactly why what you said here. It's because people think they have to swallow this down, and like it makes them a weak person if they share this. And like I think it's the complete opposite, right? I think it makes you it helps you first of all, like it's like your therapy session in a sense, right? And it just gets you to a different place, right? Like you don't have to swallow it, you don't have to listen to it like just in your head all the time, right? Like talk to people about it, and then you will be able to work through it. So do you also like talk to me about your work, right? Like just from a work perspective, like how does that, look like in the early steps, and what's, let's say, what's like the biggest kind of coaching that you offer?
Well, I always start with a free discovery call, just an opportunity for us to connect and to see if we would be good together. I am exceptionally selective with who I work for or with. And same, I want somebody to really vet me and to see, like, am I the best person to help them in this next stage of their journey? So that's the first thing, really. Is that rapport there? And are we aligned in what we both are looking for? And then I have clients that have been with me for 2 years. Sometimes it's 3 months. I think it's important though, if you're going to commit to this work, to commit at least 3 months, preferably 6, because as we start uncovering those top layers, we get into some of the more murky stuff. That can be an opportunity for somebody to be like, and split off. And we also need to come up for air. I get that too, so we don't need to be dealing with our shit all the time. It's also important that we don't get addicted to healing. At some point it's like, when are you just going to be good and go live your life and then revisit as stuff comes up? That's really important too. But my coaching is a little bit different, and that's why it's coaching, not therapy, because I'm in constant contact with my clients. So we do meet for a session, and then it's like there's points that we are connecting throughout the week as well. So it's not traditional therapy where you're just there for an hour. And I think that's
Mm,
important because shit comes up, and it's important to have a touch point and to be able to bounce ideas off and set those little reminders and keep that threaded connection going. So I do a lot of work with people on codependency, healing codependent relationships, breaking free from toxic relationships. A lot of people that love somebody with an addiction, and how do we get them to an empowered place to hold their boundaries and not be in this codependent nightmare. And some of my clients are older and they have a lot of health issues they're working on. We do a strict microdosing protocol. I've seen incredible neurocognition improvement. Not everybody is a candidate for a big psilocybin ceremony, but talk therapy paired with microdosing and a lot of the intention setting and all of it can be really powerful. So sometimes it's health concerns they're working through. And I do a lot of work with high performing males, so CEOs, professional athletes. They slay it in business or whatever, and then their marriages are really, kind of struggling a little bit, because what can make you so effective in the boardroom can also make you really bump into a lot of resistance in your romantic relationship. So I do a lot of intimacy coaching as well. So yeah, there's kind of
nice.
the umbrella.
Yes, it's because like sometimes, when you talk about success, right? And me being a father, and like for me, success has to be all the pillars, right? Like if you're successful, right? Like it's not just the money, it's not just the family, right? It's not just the spirituality, it's not just the health. It has to be all of it. And it's often disregarded, right? Like that is actual success. And so how do you think, we can work towards like a more balanced kind of situation here, right? Like is it assessing what we're bad at, what's not really working, and really focusing on that? Like how would you approach this?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds so basic, but it's like, start with a pie chart of all those things that are really important to you. How I'm showing up as a husband, a father, success, my personal health, my, whatever. And just look, where are you delegating the most amount of your time? And is that really the best service of you? And see where things are out of alignment or where something is heavy or neglected. I mean, it starts kind of with that radical, honest self assessment, but then we also need to know where we're going. It's like, if you just get in your car and turn your car on without any direction or, point that you are trying to arrive at, it's, what are you doing? So we need to know too, like, where we are headed. But we can look at where I'm at now, where I'm headed, And what is the cognitive dissonance? If this is my ideal version of me, but this is who I am now, how do I bridge that gap? How do I collapse time into that highest version of me? And then remembering there's limited amount of energy, so you can't be firing 100% in all of these quadrants. We have to be flexible. We have to, ebb and flow. And sometimes life is going to require a whole lot of energy here, and you have to go a little bit less here. But that honest assessment is really important because that will help you decide where you want to focus.
And then you said codependency. Like, what are like the different types here? Because that's something that I'm interested in here.
Codependency is such a weird word, right? Because what does that mean even? It's very difficult to describe, but it's funny because when you're in it, it's one of those, right? So, a codependent relationship to me is like, if this went away, I am not okay. And so much of the codependency work is like, how do I get strengthened in the truth of who and what I am? It is, I need to be okay regardless of what is happening outside of me. Put me in hell, I'll find a way to enjoy it. That's the end goal, right? But these codependent relationships where it's like this other person is more important than me, or I'm getting my validation all from them, or I'm not who I think I am, I'm who I think you think I am. Like, I'm letting somebody determine every part of me, my worth, my value. These are the things, right? Like, I'm violating my boundaries in order to keep connection with this person. It's like, no, we want to be at the point where I got me, and then you can be in my life. We want to be at choice. And obviously that gets a lot messier when it's a kid or a long-term partner. But at the end of the day, you get one wild and precious life, And if you are wasting it, babysitting, taking care of, somebody else, like getting shit on 24/7, that's not a life.
Okay. Beautiful. Where can people find you when they, want to see what you're doing, and if they want to maybe work with you?
So I'm super active on Instagram. It's just at Jo Weatherford. And then my website is www.joweatherford.com. And if you want just even free resources, don't just, reach out if you want to work with me, but if you have any questions, if you want me to point you in any directions, I'm just happy to be of service in any way I can be.
Amazing. Thank you for watching this episode to the end. If you got any value out of this, please like and subscribe or share it with a friend. This would help the channel a lot. Thank you for that. And I hope I will see you on the next one.